What is up? Welcome to the Blue Star Lunch Hour. I am Joey Ikes. As you can see, I don't have my guy John Owning with me today. Unfortunately, he is putting out fires on the editorial side at PFF um, as we handle work things as we have to handle them. We do this in the middle of the day, so we're a little bit um, tied to what our work obligations might be. Today's going to be a fun day for me, especially. This is what I kind of do. This is where I live. I am we're going to do some salary cap stuff today. So we are going to do a little bit of salary cap 101 as we get through this. We may not take the whole hour today. We'll see. If I get lots of comments and questions and things like that, it may take the whole hour. It may not. Before we do this, the salary cap is something that to me comes very straightforward and very simple because of the fact that um, this is kind of the world that I live in. I work with money and accounting and calculations like this for a living. So I am happy to talk through this stuff and to know this stuff. So how does the salary cap work? The salary cap works by the league takes a percentage of the total league revenue, and this is all agreed to in the CBA. If you're a nerd like me and you have it saved on your desktop, you can read through the exact calculations. I'm not gonna put you guys through that level of math here. They take a percentage of revenue. It's basic, just shy of 50-50, somewhere in the 49 to 51% range. That's always one of the main kind of talking points in a CBA negotiation for the league. They take the percentage of the salary cap, then they subtract the cost of post-retirement benefits for players, other player benefits other than just player salaries, and then they subtract that out and they get the amount that is available for player salaries. Then they divide that number by 32, and each team gets an even salary cap. This year, the number is $255.4 million. But each team actually operates on a different salary cap within each year. And the reason is because you can take salary cap from one season and roll it to the next season. And this dynamic, this fact, came into play in the CBA in 2011, and it's really the first time that happened, and that is really the change that drove the big difference in the way the salary cap worked from pre-2011 CBA to post-2011 CBA. And it really makes a huge difference in terms of that calculation. Because of this, because you have any unused cap, years whenever you have, we'll take the Bears, for example. The Bears have not been very good for several years. They used the top 10 pick on Justin Fields. That didn't necessarily work out the way that they kind of hoped it would work out. But they were sort of playing it conservative from a cap standpoint. So now that they have drafted Caleb Williams, they can go out and spend money. They can go out and trade for Montez Sweat because they have all this rolled over cap space from when they weren't very good and weren't spending up for new players. That rollover dynamic really changed the game when it came to salary cap, because instead of the cap being now kind of a 1 year at a time proposition that you have to worry about next year, because I'm trying to think of the right way to explain this in a way that kind of makes sense other than in my kind of screwed up head. Uh, if I have $10 million of available cap space this year and I don't use it, that money becomes available cap space next year too. So there's less incentive for teams to actually spend up all the way to the salary cap. They also added a cash spending floor, which is 90% over the salary cap over specified 3 to 4 year windows. We just finished one in 2023. Notice the Cowboys signed a flurry of extensions with signing bonuses in them in 2023 because they had to get to the cash spending floor for the year or for the period before the period ended. So because you can roll that cap space over, it creates the ability to create this massive amount of cap space for teams. And it also removes the penalty, removes the dread of converting players' salary cap accounting in order to create more cap space in the current year. Because if you create more cap space in the current year, but you don't use all of it, it just rolls over to the next year and can cover any future dead money. So that was really kind of a big game-changing aspect of the 2011 CBA that helped to create the salary cap environment that we have now. The salary cap liability for teams, in other words, their total cap number, and then in the inverse, their available cap space, is calculated differently in the offseason versus in the regular season. In the offseason and all the way through into training camp and to the point of making the first or the final cuts to a 53-man roster, the cap is calculated by taking the top 51 contracts plus any dead money from terminated or traded contracts. So, for example, Ezekiel Elliott's contract for the Cowboys is on the salary cap for the $2 million cap number that he currently holds on his one-year contract that he has with the Cowboys now. Plus, it also holds with the dead money from his prior contract, which was terminated. That's where you get the idea that they're paying him twice. Even though they're not paying him twice, the dead money is money that's already been paid to him and is being accounted for under the salary cap this year. So he's in the top 51 and he's in the dead money, so he's there technically twice. Now, then once you get into season, once you cut the roster down to 53 players, and this is why all teams carry a certain amount of salary cap space through the offseason and into the regular season, is because you go from having 51 contracts on your books to now having everyone who's on the active roster. So all 53 players on the active roster, plus, the emergency quarterback and, all the other small little roster changes that they make that can be tough to keep up with because they make so many small ones every year. Then your practice squad players, any players on PUP or injured reserve. And then on top of that, your dead money from your terminated or traded contracts that were there in the offseason continues through. And anybody that you cut coming out of training camp that had prorated signing bonus, even a lot of rookie draft picks and stuff that get cut had maybe $2 million signing bonuses that had prorated signing bonus on it. That money then turns into dead money on the cap for that current year. And it kind of gets complicated when they wind up coming back and all that kind of stuff in terms of when they come back to the team and how that gets accounted for in future salary cap years. So that's how the salary cap works. But in any year, a player will make, 5, 6, 7, sometimes depending on the team, different types of compensation. And those types of compensations get factored into the salary cap calculation significantly differently, where you have a player's base salary. That's pretty much as straightforward as it can be. That's the amount of base salary that they get paid, regardless of their performance, regardless of whether there was a signing bonus or not, or if there's a roster bonus or not. The base salary is the base salary. That is what there's a league minimum base salary for each year of experience that a player is in the league. They have a base salary that they are required, a minimum that they are required to be paid. And then there is signing bonus and all that other kind of stuff. Signing bonus is a separate part of the contract. It is an addendum to the contract that shows that the player will have a signing bonus paid of this amount, despite, contrary to popular belief, propagated by, if you're following the Dallas Cowboys, propagated by certain members of even the team's own media team. A signing bonus does not necessarily get paid as soon as the contract is signed. The contracts will all have an addendum to the contract that states exactly when the signing bonus will be paid. So some of them are paid out immediately. Some of them are paid out in 2 or 3 payments between then and the start of the season. Most of the time, they are paid out in weekly or bi-weekly installments throughout the 18 or 36-week payment period that NFL players get. In other words, the signing bonus hits the NFL player's paycheck exactly the same as their base salary in most situations. Then they have the option bonus, which really kind of came into vogue around the time that Jared Goff and Carson Wentz signed their contracts. It's essentially another signing bonus in a separate year, and it's a way for the team to guarantee money into future years and use additional proration and all that kind of stuff. And Ultra, you are absolutely right. Void years are a game changer in terms of cap calculation. We will get to void years a little bit later, but the funny thing is void years have been around for a really long time, and void years are something that the Cowboys actually used to use a lot and still use relatively often. They don't use it as creatively as other teams do or have. And it's something that became very, very popular as teams were trying to account for everything that went on with the salary cap surrounding the pandemic from a few years ago, as they were trying to account for an unexpected or unanticipated drop in the salary cap in 2021. Or excuse me, in 2022 after they kept it up in 2021. Anyway. Then there's roster bonuses. We see this all the time. This guy's going to get $300,000 per game that he's on the roster. It's another, $200,000, $300,000 that he's going to get. Then workout bonuses. Some teams treat the workout pay differently depending on the team. Some teams pay a real life workout bonus. If you come to X percentage of our off-season workouts, or if you log in for a certain number of workouts at the facility during the off-season, then you will receive $250,000 as your workout bonus. Some teams, the Cowboys are famous for doing this, they have workout de-escalators in a lot of their contracts. So what that means is that rather than paying a bonus to a player if they do show up, their base salary decreases if they do not show up. So when they brag about their massive participation in their offseason programs and how many guys show up all the time and all that kind of stuff, there's lots of reasons why. And the reason for the de-escalator versus the bonus, there's a big business school case study that you can study about whether people respond better to incentives or fear of loss, and it goes back to all that. It's actually a relatively sound business practice to do it that way. Then there are individual performance incentives, things like if Ezekiel Elliott scores 10 touchdowns, he receives another $250,000. If Dak Prescott throws a certain number of touchdowns, he receives a certain bonus. If he is named to the Pro Bowl, if he is named to an All-Pro team, he receives a certain bonus. Those are divided into likely to be earned and not likely to be earned incentives. You've probably heard those terminology before. We'll get into exactly what those mean and why that matters a little bit later. Then there are team performance incentives. If the team makes the playoffs, if the team goes to the Super Bowl, if the team wins the Super Bowl, they receive X bonuses, etc. All right. So then how are those pieces of compensation calculated on the salary cap? And this probably isn't the cleanest way to present it, but I wanted to put it in writing so that it was a little bit easier for us to go through. So base salary, it is exactly what it sounds like. It is accounted for entirely on the year that it's paid. So if a person has a $10 million base salary, they will have a cap number of at least $10 million. Their base salary aspect of the cap calculation will be at least $10 million. That is entirely accounted for within the year that it is paid. Signing bonus and option bonus, though, are prorated over the life of the contract. So if a player has a $10 million signing bonus, then you can prorate that over a maximum of 5 years. So you can prorate that down to counting as little as $2 million on the salary cap this year, next year, and the 3 years after that. The option bonus, like I said, it works a little bit like an additional signing bonus. It prorates out over that max of 5 years. Also, roster bonuses account during the year when they're paid. Workout bonuses, same way. And then we get into the incentives. The likely to be earned incentive means that within the prior season, the player achieved the threshold. So if the threshold was for CeeDee Lamb to have 1,000 receiving yards, he reached that threshold last year. So because of that, he is, according to the CBA, likely to reach that level again, which means that he is likely to meet that threshold, likely to earn that incentive, and the team must account for that on this current year's cap until the player fails to reach that threshold. So really until the end of the season, and then it can fall off. And then once it falls off, that space can then be rolled over into the next year. And then we get into not likely to be earned incentives. That's if a player didn't earn those incentives. So last year, Ezekiel Elliott had, I think, 8 touchdowns. He did not reach the 10 touchdowns that is in his current contract as his incentive for touchdowns. So because he didn't reach that, it's considered not likely to be earned this year. So that is not accounted for on the current salary cap. So there's a bonus within Ezekiel's contract that says if he reaches this 10 touchdowns, he gets, I think it's $250,000 if the team also makes the playoff. There's, all this stuff is kind of tied together. But because he didn't reach that threshold, it doesn't have to be accounted for on the cap right now, or even this year at all. Even if he hits 10 touchdowns in week 14, the team can add that $250,000 to this year's cap. Or if there's no room on this year's cap, they can roll it to the next year's cap and allow that hit to happen then. So again, another opportunity for pay for a player to be spread over multiple years on a contract because of the way that it is accounted for. So that is kind of super high level what we're talking about when we talk about how the salary cap is accounted for, all these sorts of things. So let's play. Let's play a little bit here. We're going to come over to Excel. You guys can see that. Hopefully you guys can see it okay. I have a theoretical contract that I was putting together here for CeeDee Lamb. And we're going to look at the differences in what happens if you do things different ways. So I put $32 million a year for 5 years. $32 million a year is currently the very top of the wide receiver market. That is the value of A.J. Brown's new contract that he signed the day of the draft. That's a little bit of a different contract because it's very little new money. It's basically just guaranteeing like a whole crap load of new money. Or of old money, turning it into new guarantees and adding like $15 million to the end of it and calling it a new contract. But because the Eagles are proactive in these deals, they took a short-term deal and turned it into a long-term deal without adding very much money to it. That's why we talk about Howie as the guy who you want to think about from a cap standpoint. Okay. So in this situation, I gave CeeDee a $30 million signing bonus. A lot of these numbers I'm using because they're easy enough to do the math with. So if CeeDee gets I think the largest signing bonus received by a wide receiver was Tyreek Hill. It's in the neighborhood of $27 or $28 million so far. I bumped that up a little bit. Let's say we're going to pay CeeDee Lamb 5 years, $160 million with a $30 million signing bonus. And then you can talk about, how much of it is guaranteed. You could probably say, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 71-ish million dollars would be guaranteed in that. And that would be basically the 50 would be the first 2 years, 24 and 25. He probably would want 25 and 26, which would be the first 2 years of the new contract, would be 71 million in guarantees. You could have this 21 million not fully guaranteed at signing, but fully guaranteed for injury only, and then convert to fully guaranteed at the start of the 2025 league year, something like that. Basically, it would be guaranteed. So this is how it would break out. And I don't have roster bonuses and other things like that built in because it's hard. In the grand scheme of things, a $300,000 roster bonus does not make a big difference when it comes to cap calculation. Same thing with a lot of the not likely to be earned incentives. It's kind of a weird conversation you have to get to where a few $100,000 in the cap calculation doesn't really matter all that much. So we're looking at big buckets here. So if we get, and really you could take this base salary number and stick some of this in roster bonus, and the accounting would be the same because, as we talked about, the base salary and the roster bonus are accounted for in the same way. So, and also I'm going to go to Ultra here. We're not talking about free agency here. The Eagles are extremely proactive signing their own players. Just this year, they have signed A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Landon Dickerson, and Haloti Vaitai to new contracts at or near the very, very, very top of the market at their position, at valuable positions. 2 wide receivers, a left tackle, and a guard. That's 3 players at some of the most valuable positions, plus an offensive lineman at the top of the market. That's a big, huge deal for them to have to deal with. So, but they made it work the year after they signed the quarterback to a massive contract because they are out in front of these things. They are doing these things a year early or even 2 years early in some cases, rather than waiting because they're not negotiating. They have shown, and Howie has done this really since he came back after the Chip Kelly stuff. He has shown a desire and a want to and a propensity to sign his own players and to do it early and to do it fairly, which makes players more likely to want to negotiate with them when it comes time. So 5 years, $160 million extension. So you ask, why do you have 6 years here? Well, the reason is because in this situation, I am signing CD to an extension of his current contract, not a new contract. So what does that mean? That means that we can take the $17.9 million. I have it rounded to 17 here. Again, I'm trying to keep things relatively simple for the Excel, so there's not too many decimals running around here. $17 million, we could call it $18 million, and then we could change this number to 29. What that allows you to do is take this $18 million and it no longer has to sit in this spot right here, which is where it's sitting right now. So right now, CeeDee Lamb's cap number is between 17 and $18 million. So you could sign CeeDee Lamb to a 5-year, $160 million contract right now, and his cap number would go down in 2024. Even though he's being paid $32 million in cash this year, which would be his signing bonus plus his $2 million in base salary. I just played the base salaries in here in a way that escalates in a way that contracts typically do in order to get to the total that we needed to get to, which is $178 million. These can be moved around in a whole bunch of different ways within the contract. Oftentimes teams will put big numbers either in the middle of the contract so that they can do, this game that we're about to play here, or they'll put them at the very end of the contract saying the salary cap is going to go up. By the time we get to 2028, we want to be having extension conversations with CD anyway, so he'll never see that $38 million base salary because it will be part of a new extension that he signs in 2028 when he's 28 or 29 years old. We'll sign him to a 3-year extension, and we'll spread that 40 and that 38 out over those few years, and add a little bit of new money to it, sort of like what the Eagles did with AJ Brown. So this is one possibility. So what happens here is that you wind up with this escalating cap situation, and you wind up reaching these points where the player is counting more on the cap than he's getting paid in cash because you have this prorated bonus. Now you got the big benefit here, but to some people, as some people would say, but the credit card's going to come due. You have to pay for it at some time. Yes, you do have to account for it on the salary cap at some point. But if the salary cap in 2025 is 7% higher than the $255 million that it is in 2024, then the difference between this 24 million and the 18 million that he's counting on your salary cap for 2024 right now is eaten up. The wide receiver market will increase. This will look like a value in the next couple of years. So now let's play this out in a different way. Let's say what the Cowboys would likely do in this situation is they would take this $18 million, they would convert it, they would do a cap conversion and convert this number down to, well, for easy math's sake, we'll say $3 million. And they will convert it to essentially another signing bonus, and they will do $3 million a year over the next 5 years of the contract. And now you see the cap shift. So now he went from counting $18 million in one season on the salary cap to, if we decide to do it the other way, now he counts $32 million over the first 2 years of the cap, which was the $24 million here and the $8 million here, to now he counts $20 million over the first 2 years. And now this cash number stays the same at 18. His cash doesn't change, as we talked about before. The payment timing doesn't change. The team doesn't need permission to make the change. That's written into the addendum of the contract with the signing bonus. Nothing changes for the player. The team creates, out of nowhere, $12 million in additional cap space by snapping a finger. Now, they moved it to future years. They have to pay for that in future years. Again, let's think this through. The cap goes up 7% per year over the last 13 or 14 years. So if the cap continues to increase like that, this $3 million is about 1% of the salary cap. It is getting eaten by inflation. It is becoming a smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller part of the salary cap. So we'll play the salary cap out here. If it rises at 7%, the cap is going up about $20 million a year or more over the next 5 years. So that $12 million, that $15 million in 2025 would have been, we'll do the math, we got to do the math the right way, though. That helps. About 5% of the cap. Instead, if we take 3% or 3 million divided by the total cap, in terms of total percentage that it counts, we have now generated 0.5%. We'll turn this into percentages to make our life easier to see it here. We have manifested out of nowhere almost 1% of the salary cap from thin air by making this conversion over the course of the entire contract. Just by making the conversion, nothing changes for the player. We make the conversion, voila, we have manifested this value because of the fact that we understand the cap is going to rise, because of the fact that we understand that $3 million over the course of $15 million spread out over 5 years for the team in terms of these calculations is a better way to do it than having it count all in 1 year. Now, some teams, and the Eagles are probably the best in the league at doing this. They will have option bonuses in their contract, and they will have, and they really did, the first time they really did this on a contract was the Jalen Hurts contract when they pre-wrote this stuff in. So what they will do is they will just write contracts like this. And then they will put a $15 million option bonus. Let's do it this way. It's where it's easier to see. They will do a $15 million option bonus in 2025, a $20 million option bonus there, 25, 30, etc. 35, we'll call it 40 million just because we got to get to our number. And then what they will do is they will take that number, divide it by 5, and that will be spread across 4 years or across 5 years. Then they will do the same thing the next year, divide it by 5. And they have added, as Ultra pointed out earlier, they've added these void years onto the end of the contract to accept all of these contract charges, all of these cap charges. And then they'll do it again. They'll take this one here, divide that by 5. Then they'll do it here. And you get the idea. And we'll do the 40 million here. And now look at what you're able to do from a cash versus cap standpoint when you do this. You are able to consistently manifest 7, 8, 10, 12, 15 million of extra value in the contract because of the fact that you did it this way. Now, Joey, when the contract voids after 2029, you're going to have a $64 million cap hit in 2030. Maybe. Or maybe you're going to be proactive like the Eagles regularly are, and you're going to sign the player to another extension, even if the extension does not signify wanting the player to play for your team longer. They did this with Jason Kelce last year. The Eagles signed Jason Kelce to an extension for the fact that they knew Jason Kelce was likely to retire. They knew that his contract was going to have void money coming up on it. So they signed him to an extension that included a year in 2024 so that they could hold him until June 1st, let him go to the retired list after that and get split. And that is how you create consistently value across the contract. So now let's say that if you do this way, CD never counts more than $28 million against the signing bonus during the life of his contract. And he never counts more than $28 million at all until 2031. And let's play our exercise out even further. Now, who knows if the cap continues to rise at that rate for that long? But if it were, you're talking about a $30 million, $38, $40 million cap hit on a $409 million salary cap. So this is how teams can manipulate the salary cap. And there are a million other ways. I talk about the income tax code a lot because that is how I compare this. Rich people don't pay taxes because they know how to use the system. So this is salary cap 101. We could get way deeper. And when we get new contracts for CD, when we get new contracts for Dak, Micah, etc., we will look at the contracts in depth with the details, and we'll make sure that we get everything for you guys. Ultra, thanks for hanging out, buddy. The Cowboys do occasionally act proactively, and they have said this many times. They talk about it with trades during the draft. They talk about it with trades in season. They talk about it with player contracts. They want the player to come to them. They don't want to be the one to make the first call. They will almost never. The thing about Diggs and Steele last year, those guys were not at the top of the market. Diggs was 5th, 6th, 7th in the corner market. Steele was, starting level right tackle money. That's where Terrence Steele was in the right tackle world last year when he signed his contract. I mean, we can look at it now. I can show you the right tackle market. Now, some of these contracts have been signed, this year, but this is where Terrence Steele is in the right tackle market. That is not anywhere near the top of the market. This is the contract the Cowboys love to sign. They love to sign the 6th highest contract or the 8th highest contract at their position. Because for them, it means they know that they are not paying the top of the market value. We could do the same thing with cornerback. Trevon Diggs. And none of these contracts were signed this offseason. L'Jarius Sneed's down here below him. They signed him 5th highest, way smallest, significantly smaller guarantee than everybody around him, significantly smaller total guarantee than everybody around him. Those are the deals the Cowboys sign early. They do not sign deals at the top of the market early. They just don't do it. It is whether you consider it a criticism or not is a conversation for to be had. But the Cowboys don't sign players who are at the very top of the market. And they even said it. They want the leaves to fall. They want to know every bit of information before they sign a contract. They want to know they don't want to guess that the wide receiver market is going to $33 million or $32 million. They don't want to look at the landscape and say Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and A.J. Brown and all these other guys are going to sign contracts. And the biggest wide receiver contract right now is $30 million. So the next wave of wide receiver contracts is going to be at $32 or $33 million per year. They want to see the wave of wide receiver contracts at 32 or 33 million and then sign a contract at 33 and a half or 34 million. And it's happened over and over and over. It happened with Dez Bryant back in whenever he was coming off his franchise tag. They were not going to sign him to a new contract until they knew exactly what the market was going to be. And then Demaryius Thomas and Dez Bryant, and there was one other wide receiver, I can't remember the other one, all three signed contracts that were basically identical within minutes of one another right at the deadline to sign the contract. The way Robert Mays puts it, I love it. They do their homework with 6 hours left before it's due. It's just the fact of the matter. They are not the team that's doing the school project 2 weeks ahead of time to make sure that they get everything done and that they don't have anything come up last minute that hurts their ability to do it. It's just the way they operate. Is it a criticism? Maybe. Is it a fact? It absolutely is. So we're going to go a little bit early because I think we've covered everything. If you guys have questions about the cap, hit me up. I'm on Twitter at Joey Ikes. Make sure you don't forget John on Twitter at John Owning. He will be back with us on Thursday. I'm not sure what we're going to cover on Thursday yet, but John and I will talk about it. Maybe we'll take some questions and we will cover some of that stuff. But is the NFL salary cap a myth? Yes and no. No, it's not a myth because it really does exist. Is it something that you do have to calculate and you do have to manage? Yes. Is the fact that the NFL salary cap is a restriction on whether the team can do what it wants to do when it wants to do it? No, that is not true. The salary cap, and we've heard multiple NFL GMs say it over the course of the last few years, we can sign anybody we want to any deal we want at any time we want without worrying about the cap. Now, a lot of those teams have, finance bros and econ guys and, mathematicians and things like that running their salary cap, not former equipment managers at the University of Arkansas and buddies with the GM and all that kind of stuff. So that's the Blue Star Lunch Hour for today. Thank you guys for joining us. Again, I'm Joey Ikes. John's not here. He'll be back. Remember, if you're a business owner, this show is brought to you by Silver Moon Financial. That's my financial accounting and bookkeeping company. There's a link in the description below the video where you can go get your QuickBooks Online guide absolutely for free. Gives you 10 essential steps you got to follow if you want to keep your books in the right shape for your business. If you want better bookkeeping but don't have the time, the desire, or the ability to do it yourself, let me know. I'm happy to help you. We will get you in the right place. Thanks, guys. We will see you on Thursday. That's the show for today.